Alright, I'm gonna come take you to see this action movie. It's got car chases, gunfights, bank robberies. It's crazy, but you can't ask me anything about what happens in the movie or how it ends, alright? Whose car are we gonna take? Hey, it's Jay, and my ninth favorite film of all time is The Town, directed by Ben Affleck. So without further ado, let's get into the plot. So the film takes place in a town in Boston called Charlestown, and a gang of four robbers made up of Doug McRae, played by Ben Affleck, Jem Coughlin, played by Jeremy Renner, and their two goons, Glonesy McClone and Des Eldon, take a bank hostage, and they rob it. And they use the bank manager, Claire Kesey, played by Rebecca Hall, to open up the safe and score big. They burn the tapes, they pour gasoline all over the place to get rid of all fingerprints, and they burn the getaway van so that there's no trace evidence as to who did what. The only problem with this is they recover Claire's driver's license, and it's revealed that she lives in Charlestown, which is, really bad, seeing as she lives in the same town as the four people who just robbed her, place of work blind. So Jem, who's a little psychotic, wants to just kill her, eliminate her right away. But Doug does not want to do that, and so he kind of follows her around to make sure that she doesn't, say anything to the police that would convict them of being the four people at the scene of the crime. So, as Doug is, trying to keep an eye on Claire, a romance does form in between them, but Doug can't really tell the guys that because that would bode horribly for both him and Claire. It's then established that Claire saw the tattoo that's on the back of Jem's neck when they were committing a crime. So, to try and make sure that she doesn't tell the police, which, again, would convict all of them, he's like, yeah, you could tell the police, but then you'll get put into, witness protection, you might get sent to a different state, you'll constantly have people guarding you, and you'll always be in a sense of danger. Or, you could keep quiet, try and just play both sides, which works, and she ends up, not telling the police that she did see one of the robber's tattoos. There's also, to kind of just, get some trust developed between Claire and Doug. Doug tells her about how his mother left him when he was a kid, and his father was just destroyed by that. And, she moved, he thinks that she moved to Tangerine, Florida, which is where he really wants to go to get out of this town, because this town is hell for a lot of people. You always have to be looking over your shoulder, making sure you're not being followed. Your place of business is always at risk from gangsters and robbers. It's not a fun place to live in. So he wants to put that all behind him. And Tangerine, Florida seems like his destination, seeing as that's where he thinks his mother fled to when he was a kid. So one night, Claire tells Doug about how some Dominican thugs were harassing her and throwing bottles at her. And, to try to protect her, he enlists the help of Jem to go to their house and kind of rough them up a bit, intimidate them. But I think this scene, more than any scene in the movie, really shows how loose and unstable and out of control Jem is, because Doug makes it very clear, we're just gonna go hurt somebody. We're not gonna escalate this. We're not gonna, go crazy about it. I just want to rough them up a bit. And he just ends up shooting them when they're not giving him the information that Jem wants to hear, which is, what'd you guys do to make my buddy here so angry? Because Doug and Jem are like brothers. Because Jem spent 9 years in prison after laying someone out who was trying to get Doug. So it's a real big brotherly bond that they share. So it really shows how just off the wall and, how quickly Jem can just, go off the deep end and just, try and escalate situations to heights that they weren't supposed to be in the first place. So the main man on the case is FBI Special Agent Adam Frawley, played by John Hamm. And he kind of is spying on these guys and takes pictures of them while they're at a family party and connects them to Fergie, who is a plant shop owner, but he's also behind pretty much every major crime that's happened in that city. And he also has another thing planned for him. So when they go and, execute this massive heist again. It goes awry because, of course, Jem shoots a guard, which, isn't very smart when the FBI is on your ass. And this big chase ensues, and they're able to capture them. The only problem is they weren't able to get a single confession from anybody, so by law, they have to release them, thus putting another wrench in, Agent Ferrari's plan to, tie these four to that massive bank robbery we saw at the beginning of the film. Doug then goes and visits his father in prison because he took after a life of crime, following his father's footsteps, and completely gave up being an all-star hockey player that everybody looked up to, a local hero as he's dubbed. And he tells his father his plan to leave Boston and move to Florida to be with his mom, quote unquote. I'll explain why I'm saying quote unquote a little later on in the review, but it's such a touching scene because there's just, you can tell just by the way his father's looking at Doug that there's something that he's not telling him that he wants to tell him so bad, but doesn't have the heart to tell him because it's his son. And the news I'm about to, tell you guys later on in the review, I don't think anybody would have an easy time telling their kid that hasn't been the truth the entire time I've been raising you. So yeah, it's a really touching scene and just really shows that even though all these guys act hard, there's a lot of soft sides to, who they are as people, especially when it comes to a father-son relationship like that. It then comes to Agent Ferrari's attention that Claire has quit her job as bank manager. Now, this is a little suspect, and he calls her in and basically says that something fishy's going on here. They used you to open the bank, to open the vault. They don't harm you, and now you're seeing Doug McCrae, one of the prime suspects of this bank robbery, which she doesn't know yet, but, it's revealed to her that Doug is a suspect, which obviously breaks her heart because he's been lying to her this whole time. So it's like, this is all looking a little fishy, and you are going to need a lawyer because now you're a suspect to this whole, bank robbery. So with Doug playing, hiding under the radar, trying to protect Claire, Fergie and Jem are really pressuring him into when the next big heist is and what they're going to do and how big they're going to go. And Fergie especially, because at this point, Doug just thinks that Fergie is the man pulling the strings, but it turns out Fergie's a lot worse. Fergie has been controlling Doug's father, or did control Doug's father whenever Doug's father went on big missions or, heists and robberies, by making his mother addicted to drugs, which ultimately ended up leading to her suicide. So, Doug's father has been lying to him all his life. His mom didn't leave. She killed herself because she was addicted to drugs. And, Fergie is behind all that to make sure that Doug's father did his bidding. And he's like, well, I hate to see something happen to your little girlfriend, referring to Claire. And, Doug, being so inclined to protect Claire, is like, fine, I'm in. But if anything happens to Claire, and if I have any sneaking suspicion that something will happen to Claire, I will come back here and kill you, and I guess you can call it Fergie's muscle. I will kill both of you without question. Another really great scene happens where, this was before, I forgot to mention it, where Doug and Claire are on a date, and Jem finds Doug. And it's so stressful and such a tense scene because at any second, Jem could turn around and Claire could see the tattoo on the back of the neck, just, absolutely obliterating everything that they've worked towards as to not get caught. So it's just such a tense scene, and Jem is just so, playfully chaotic that it just adds to the tension and just the, oh God, and it's like, Doug has to quickly grab Jem by the neck to give him a hug so he doesn't reveal, who he is, and the big evidence that will get them all locked up. It's such a good scene, such a great, what's going to happen? Is she going to see the tattoo? Is someone going to get revealed? Is someone going to slip? Is someone going to Freudian slip? It's just, oh, it's so good. I still I start shaking even though I know exactly what's going to happen. I still shake every time that scene comes because it's just so well shot and the pacing is just amazing. So the day has come for the final heist, and it's at Fenway Park. Jem and Doug dress up as police officers, while Glownsy and Dez dress up as paramedics. And they go and they infiltrate Fenway Park, and they use the fact that they are dressed as cops to intimidate the real cops into surrendering their weapons and zip tying them so that they can't interfere. And they rob the Fenway Park bank vault for, where all they collect all the money for tickets, food, all that, concessions, and souvenirs. So they rob all that. They get about 3.5 mil. However, while all this is going on, Chris Coughlin, who is Jem's sister and Doug's druggy girlfriend, played by Blake Lively, has revealed everything to Adam Frawley about what's going to happen at Fenway Park. Take a little detour. Chris believes that Doug is the father of her kid, but he's not. But doesn't have the heart to tell her that. Again, soft side showing, and she's just a very bad influence on her kid and gets into a big car accident. And so the kid is placed in, protective, child protection agencies, and, she has to spill the beans at risk of losing all contact with her kid forever. So, yeah, Chris is not very stable. Not in the way that Jem's unstable. Chris is very unstable because she's a massive druggie. So she has to reveal everything, to make sure that she can see her kid again. So Doug is starting to catch on because there's nobody in Fenway. It's quiet. Too quiet. That cliched line. Well, that actually rings true here. There's no one there. And, these guys aren't idiots. They are very intelligent as to how they work their operations. And, then a huge gunfight breaks out between the FBI, the police, and the four bank robbers. And in the process, Glownsy and Dez are shot dead by the FBI. So Plan B has to kick into place, and they use their cop disguises to kind of blend in. But it's relayed to Frawley that, the cops were killed by other cops, and that immediately sets off a million red flags in his mind. And he goes off to find these cops. And then he finally confronts Jem, who is walking away very suspiciously with the bag of money. And a big gunfight ensues between Frawley and Jem and the police force. And, not wanting to get locked up again because Jem is very mentally destroyed from his first trip to prison, he doesn't want to go back. And so he commits suicide by police by, walking out with his guns drawn. Nothing in it, but that's a sign for cops to fire because it's their lives or his. And, that really traumatizes Doug because, that's his best friend. And so he calls Claire to see her one last time before he leaves for Tangerine, Florida, before asking her, are you coming with me? I want you to come with me. And she just wants him to come over. He knows that the cops are there because he's spying on her with binoculars, because at this point you really need to cover your own ass if you're in this much shit. So he thinks that she's trying to betray him. Claire's trying to betray Doug. But then she says, it's one of my sunny days. When they're on a date, she says that every sunny day makes me think of someone dying because my brother died on a day just like this. And that, phrase, it'll be like one of my sunny days, hints to Doug that, no, I'm not trying to betray you. I'm actually trying to help you. Get out of here. Go. I don't want you to get caught up in this. Which leads Doug to leave and go to Tangerine, Florida. And in epilogue, Claire is gardening, and she finds this duffel bag filled with the cash that Doug has stolen throughout the movie, and a note from him, as well as a tangerine as a subtle nod that this is where I am. I'm in Tangerine, Florida. You don't have to worry about me. And hopefully, one way or another, whether it's in life or in death, I get to see you again. And Doug looks out onto the horizon, seemingly safe in Tangerine, Florida. Oh my god, this film is so good. This film has no pacing issues in my opinion. I feel like every scene fits perfectly in this film, and there's no scenes that I was like, okay, this wasn't really necessary for the overall plot. No, every scene works. And what really makes this film so authentic and so legitimate is just the fact that there are real Charlestown citizens in this film. Yeah, some of the extras in the film, whether it be a cop, Fergie's muscle, they're all actual Charlestown residents. It's really, really cool how they got that authenticity by, using people who have lived in this town. The film opens up with amazing quotes from people that really just show what kind of a town Charlestown is. And the fact that they got to have some of these people in the movie just really hits home. Ben Affleck is an amazing director, and it's great that he can play both director and actor in a film and do so well balancing and juggling both of those things. If it was possible for an entire cast to win individual Oscars, this cast deserves it. Fantastic performances by everybody. Affleck, Hall, Hamm, Renner, and Lively. The 5 main characters, so solid. They play their characters so well. And they nail the accent so strong. Probably better than the excuse, the miserable excuse of an accent I tried to do at the beginning of this video. They just do it so well. It's like they actually lived there all their lives. And they're just able to capture just the hardships that people in this town went through on a daily basis, whether it be their establishments, getting taken over or getting robbed, or just getting beaten in the streets, or just getting mixed up with the wrong crowd. It's so good. So good. Standout scenes are definitely when Agent Frawley is interrogating Doug. That monologue by Jon Hamm is done so beautifully. And if Jeremy Renner wasn't nominated for Best Supporting Actor, Jon Hamm deserves it for that scene alone. But the scene that definitely trumps all of them is when Doug confronts Jem about leaving this town. Just, you can see that Jem is about to start crying because his brother from another mother is just turning his back on him after he literally took a bullet for him. Well, more like he shot 2 bullets for him, but, that's just the phrase. So you could see the look on his face that he's just so hurt by this. And Jem's still under the impression that Doug's the father of his niece. But, Doug's like, I told you a million times it's not my kid. And then they just start fighting, and just the chemistry in that scene and the conflict and the hurt and the anguish, it's just beautiful. There's so much eye candy in this movie when it comes to the shots and the pacing and how they set things up. And even the little scenes like Jem and Doug going to mess up those Dominican thugs who were messing with Claire work because it just shows how unhinged Jem is, like I mentioned before. And the scene where Doug's father has to tell him, oh yeah, no, I'm sure your mom's fine, even though deep down he just wants to tell Doug, your mother killed herself, by doing a lot of drugs. She got mixed up with drugs, and he wants to tell him that, but he just can't. You can see it in his face. So even if you've seen this movie for the first time, you know that there's something he's not telling Doug. And it's just beautifully shot, beautifully well done. Yeah, there are some flaws. The most glaring is, how is Doug just able to, walk right out of this town with such a huge profile on the FBI's most wanted list? How is he just, walking out? He has, Frawley has the description. He has, what he looks like. He has his past crimes. He has his record. Everything. How is he able to just, sneak out of this town with no one, batting an eye? So there's things like that. It's very glaring, but much like Donnie Darko, the negatives in this film are trounced by the positives. You could tell that this was so much passion and so much care and dedication to matching the source material they're working with. By that I mean the town of Charlestown. That everybody was so laser focused, had their heads in the game to make this film work and make it solid enough for me to give it a 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely recommending it to everybody, especially if you're a fan of heist films like Die Hard, let's say. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that film. Make sure you guys stay tuned next week, not for number 8, but for another film that's taking the world by storm. So I hope you guys are excited for that. Subscribe, ring the bell icon if you guys are, want to get notified when I upload that video. And until next time, that is a wrap.